All right, we are at time. So without further ado, hello and welcome everyone. This happens to be now the final and penultimate session of this conference. I think that might be a bit of a paradox. This is the final and penultimate session because this is going to be the final panel discussion. We are going to be having closing remarks right after this, but this is going to be the main highlight that is going to be concluding this conference. So for this session, what we thought after all the discussions that we've had around standards and regulations and API and governance, the financial institution side of things, as well as the API and API management side of things, we've heard some of the case studies. What we wanted to do is acknowledge that the landscape of APIs and technology in general is changing. And what we want to pursue for this final session is the impact of that in the world of financial services. We initially did think about just talking about AI as a sort of a standalone thing, a little bit specific to financial services. But what we thought would be more valuable for this audience would be the concept of AI readiness. So what we want to do here is to help you move past the hype, because there's probably a lot of noise that is going on right now on your LinkedIns and your emails and any other community channel that you might be a participant in. So we want to help you to cut through the noise, be able to look beyond the hype, and actually prepare you and provide you a better understanding of the path to AI readiness for the financial services industry. So with that in mind, I've got a star-studded panelists, group of panelists here who will be doing their own introduction shortly. For those who are not already bored of me, I am still Buddha, Director of Product Ecosystem here at Tech. I'm going to be hosting this final session. So without further ado, perhaps let's get started with some introductions. I'm going to go in order in this room as I see it. I'm going to start with you, Carrie. Obviously, tell us who you are and maybe some of your immediate thoughts when it comes to AI for financial services. Are you excited about it? Do you feel it's overhyped, or do you think it's going to be revolutionizing the landscape going into 2026?
Maybe all three at a certain point. But I'm Carrie Forbes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rockstar Advisory, based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada. I've spent many years doing digital transformation, all the way through core banks, the front end, all of those things. And so when I think about AI, this to me is probably one of the biggest business transformations that we are facing. And so this is where the hype comes, because I believe it's not just about a sector of one area. This is affecting everybody at a certain point. So I do think my own personal belief, though, is that it reminds me of the old days of the card catalog when that flipped online and we started searching. We are already doing it, and I think that we can't avoid it. We have to engage, and that being ready is really going to be more about what we do with ourselves as people and less about the right tools. So I'll stop there, or I'll take up the whole time. So thank you.
I'll go next because I actually do want to ride on the card catalog thing. I enjoyed when card catalog, like, it was always still there, physical rows, drawers of cards, and then the one green screen monochrome computer that, like, you could go type in and, like, oh, there he is. There's where this book is. I'm really hyped about that as well. I'm Jaime Lopez. I work at Jack Henry, a technology service provider in the United States. So we provide core banking software, digital banking software, payments, and a whole bunch of other things that run banks and credit unions in the US. And I'm pretty much on the more positive side. Revolutionize the industry feels really difficult to, like, hang my hat on, but I'll say dramatically change the industry. And more specifically, I think we're going to talk about AI as a loose definition, but we're mostly talking about generative AI, right? So, the GPT transformers created by researchers at Google and popularized by OpenAI's ChatGPT for the consumer side. Is AI, machine learning, deep learning, a lot of these things have been traditional things that have been used for a very long time in the banking industry. But generative AI is, I think, the bigger thing that we're talking about today, the most hype flavor.
Perfect. That brings us to Jason. Again, I've got a lot of questions for each one of you, by the way, but I'm going to head over to Jason for introduction first.
Absolutely. I'm Jason Cain. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Shiftmate. I've been on the credit union industry my entire life. So serving on the other side of this coin for over 25 years at various credit unions at an executive level. Overhyped, when I think about I kind of think about it like we're in kind of like the dot-com bubble right now with AI, where everybody's just hitting this market, trying to cash out as quickly as possible. The concept of AI, it's this uh, aspect that nobody really understands it completely, but they're trying to attach themselves to it somehow. Do I think AI is a sustainable technology? Absolutely. And I think it's going to transform mankind in ways that we cannot even fathom at this point. Today, it's in a really good state, but it's the worst that we're going to ever experience. And it's already doing super well with what we're utilizing it as. Thank you.
That's great. All right. That sets the scene quite nicely. I think we've got mostly on the optimistic side of things with certain concerns here and there. What I'm quite curious about, obviously, one thing that Jaime, you just mentioned was around the fact that AI has existed for a very long time. So it's not something that has just been available in the last couple of years. What has changed is sort of the democratization of AI, where accessing some of those LLMs, which were historically more I guess, less available to the regular consumers. That's sort of been the primary shift. And that, as you said, generative AI is sort of led the way to things that are a lot more relatable. And therefore, the consumers are now more on board with using some of those things, and that sort of led the businesses to take more action and more notice to actually incorporate things a little bit more. So from your perspective, the journey of that sort of the maturity journey that organizations usually go on to, do you see that changing as well across organization? Because, as you say, AI has existed before, but now with this advent of Gen AI, has the way the businesses are thinking about AI in financial services, has that completely changed now?
Yeah, so I think the way that I put it was it's sort of like the new iPhone moment. And what I mean by that is IT organizations, information technology organizations, stability is king. And in banking, your bank, credit union, your chartered financial institution, you have to be really rock steady and regulatory aspects come into play. But if we recall what happened when the iPhone came out, execs said, IT, you are going to find a way to make this iPhone I have in my pocket approved and work within our systems. And a whole bunch of policies had to change overnight. A whole bunch of new companies grew up overnight to manage these things securely and et cetera. And it feels like the same thing here. As I mentioned, AI, whatever flavor that you want, has been in the banks and credit unions for a very long time, but it's not predominantly used by the execs. It's been data scientists, been fraud, compliance, risk analysts. But this was the time they're like, you can't grab ChatGPT, but it feels like they said, IT, find a way to make this happen for our institution because look how powerful it is.
All right. That leads us quite nicely into sort of Carrie, you mentioned something around sort of a little bit more of I guess you lie somewhere in the middle of the spectrum of what I got from you. Just thinking, going a little bit deeper into that space, what would you say then is probably the highest opportunity or the greatest opportunity that AI presents right now? It might be a smaller niche, perhaps, or a specific area. Do you think there is the most sort of opportunity that lies, but also how would you balance that out against sort of the risks that might come into the picture as a consequence of doing this?
I love this question. And similar to Jason, I've spent a lot of time in the credit union system, and I've also been in banks. So there's a real push-pull, I think, in what drives an organization to adopt. And I do think that the biggest, and it sort of goes along with what Jaime was saying here, we now have what the average person can use very easily in their hands. So a lot of fear and headlines will drive, you're going to lose your job, we're going to replace you. But if I think about the challenges within an operation that's like a credit union or a small FI or even a small business these days, you have now the ability to do a couple of things: align your people and augment their labor, as opposed to having to think about it as a cost, headcount replacement. To me, that's really critical, because a lot of how you're going to solve for what to do with AI is going to come from those people themselves in those roles. Think about how we train AI. We want people who do to give it, their expertise. So the entry point for that is so minimal now. And a small organization, and I heard this from somebody working in one of our large banks, has such an opportunity, because the power it takes for them to use Gen AI in their workplace and get the value is way less cost than it is for a larger organization. And that can put them on a much better playing field to innovate and to do different things. But rather than innovating the world, just think about the day-to-day cost structure and the operations of an organization. Getting that aligned and helping people feel confident and then learn is going to give you an innovative advantage that no tool in and of itself can possibly drive. And I do think the smaller institutions are well positioned if they have, and there's the balance, good policy, good understanding of the risk, and some framework around that so you can play safely. Otherwise, it can actually do the opposite.
Great point there. I think I'm going to come to Jason on this one, because you've got that background of working with credit unions, as well as now you've got your own company at this point. And I'm quite curious to get your thoughts on sort of that spectrum of maturity as well. Do you see specific organization based on maybe scale, region, technological know-how? Are they in a better position to make the most of these opportunities? And those who are not in that position, what's missing for them?
Yeah, so we're in a risk evaluation business, right? We're evaluating risk, and then the likelihood, residual, all that fun stuff around the financial industry. You want that. You want risk evaluation in the financial industry. You don't want this to be some crazy thing that everybody just does whatever they want, right? You want to have that balance in your financial services. But in balancing risk, there's opportunity risk, right? And when you think about it, you think about, is the opportunity of not pursuing this greater than if you do pursue this? And I think it far surpasses the opportunity that you're going to gain from this than not doing it. And then I look at technology as a whole. When technology has been distributed in the past, it's usually been this containerized thing that only the big players could play with, or the only certain institutions could have access to it. Can you afford a mainframe? Can you actually have access to the need to be able to actually program? In my analysis, this is the first time on Earth where immediately everybody has access to the greatest technology to ever exist in mankind. That levels the playing field. But along with that opportunity risk and leveling that playing field, you only have a certain amount of time to be able to act on that. If you don't act on that in an amount of time, it normalizes, and then everybody's doing it. So when I look at, you're in the risk evaluation business, evaluate the opportunity risk around this and experiment. Don't try to eat the entire elephant. Take it slow, but as you learn, you grow, and those experiments are successful. Expand them throughout your entire organization. I love the analogy around the iPhone. Absolutely. IT, it's not an IT play here. It's a strategy play, but how do you make it happen? You can always find reasons why something cannot work. In this case, I think it's better to find out, how do you make this work?
Great. That, interesting enough, that comes on the back of a recent MIT study that was also done around use of AI. I think it's called the State of AI in Business report in 2025, and sort of a very telling figure that's been quoted a lot of times now on social media as well, is that 95% of AI initiatives seem to be failing across organizations. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Because to your point, from what you're saying, people having tried, learned, and failed is probably a better strategy as opposed to people who have just not done anything at all and are too risk averse to even make the first move? Um, do you think this is still an okay metric when it comes to that 95%? It seems very high, but then the history of SaaS tells us perhaps differently. Maybe, Jaime, maybe you have got you had an opinion on this as well. So maybe I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's like 80 to 90 some percentage of all software projects are considered failures in a lot of studies like this. And by that, they don't mean never delivered anything. There's certainly some of those. A lot of it is, hey, we thought it would take $300 in 3 days, and it took $3 million in 3 years. And so it's like, hey, that's in the failure. Like you would not have gone into that with the same sort of hopes and feels. And I also cognizant of the fact that like this is very early days. Going back to that iPhone analogy, I don't know the stat off the top of my head. I have to imagine a fair number of mobile apps failed in those first heady days of like 3 years, right? We're talking 2007 to 2009, 2010. And then you also have a lot of on the overhyped scale, we have a you know major buy now pay later company said, hey, like we got rid of all our support staff. We just YOLO'd with AI. And then they had to walk back that statement. I'm not sure exactly what's true there, but it turns out, well, actually, no, they either did not do that as described in the sort of hype articles, or they realized and they were one of the 95% of like, oh, this was a terrible mistake. We actually do need humans here, perhaps assisted by AI.
Great points there. I think, and the other point that you also bring out there is the fact that it's not that they didn't accomplish anything. The 95%, the metric of success wasn't that just do something and they didn't do that something. It's more about how the POCs were trying to move into a more production ready environment that could potentially scale for the end users. And like that chasm seemed to be just too big to be able to scale. And I think that's where the challenge was, which seems like a lot of the newer technologies, when they come in, they tend to face a similar issue. So my question then to you, Carrie, is if let's assume we are in the next cycle of this report has now come in 2025, there's probably going to be another one in 2026. How do people do better? What kind of foundations or fundamentals do they need to be in place, going back to that AI readiness conversation, to reduce that statistic, I suppose, as a starting point?
I'm not surprised by that statistic because, again, having done a lot of transformations over 25 years, it's the same problem. And I think a lot of it is we tend to, and as technologists, we have a great tool and we start to think about how we apply it. And we tend to come into an organization and go, hey, in a very, in the way that works in our frameworks and the way that we design things to say, here's what you need, just put it in. However, what we forget is that something of this nature that we've talked that's very, very large doesn't just disrupt a process, it changes the entire rhythm of how work flows amongst people. So one of the things that I kind of look at is you kind of have to almost map your network. What does this change do downstream? Who does it touch? And what happens is once you start fanning that out, you start to realize the impact isn't just on, say, the immediate technical components. It's going to have a policy change. It might run into a legislative change. It might have a group of people who don't have the capabilities yet and don't understand probably the biggest thing, the why. So often with an organization, and I see this at the board level, we need to do, boards and CEOs, we need an AI thing. We need to get on the AI train. Great. But the question is the why. So if we just try to shoehorn it in, we end up with all of that. We have a great POC and it doesn't land anywhere. But if we think about that comes from especially the folks that are going to all be involved, and we say, what would be a great way for us to embed this? And then, organically think about this is a real issue, then you're going to have everybody's input. And then the adoption, as it were, becomes an innovation instead of a change. So to me, it's a lot about people, but we get excited about the thing and we forget that we got to take others along the journey with us to understand why we're so excited and then to see how it's going to. And we may, the other thing that's also very, very unfortunate is we might discover that there are real reasons that we have to either slow down or change our approach because those things that seem like annoyances could be real systemic barriers that also might need to be addressed. So it does get complex, and it's usually because of the people. If it weren't for them, right?
Oh boy, people problems. Jason, just to get your thoughts on that as well. I think we're talking AI foundations in this case, where once again we are talking there's a cultural shift happening, or at least is required. There is sort of the people shift that needs to be addressed. There is a policy implementation there as well. That's probably also as important. From a more, I guess, technical standpoint, would you say there are specific building blocks that people might need to consider? I think there's conversations around, say, data sovereignty, for instance, and the quality of data in and out, the security of that data in and out, and sort of just thinking about it at scale. What would your sort of recommendation be in that space?
Absolutely. I do love starting with the why and your outcome. What is the results that you want to get? And there's huge opportunity for efficiency and, more importantly, revenue and so many capacities with this. If I think about what it takes to get to even being able to prepare yourself for AI, you first need to start with all of your data, get all of those systems together under one warehouse in the cloud. It has to be in the cloud. It cannot be inside of your organization. You have to get it in the cloud. Once you have it, a good solid data structure, all of your ETL processes are loading the data the way you need it. Next, you need to sit an API layer on top of that, application programming interface. So that is what exposes your data in a secure manner. That's where you can start to have what's called interoperability, where if you update or create a loan application, it can update your LOS and it can update your data warehouse, and it can, or if you order a card, it can update your core, it can order it through the card system, and it can update your database, having real-time analytics throughout the day. API is essential to it. Once you have your API environment all set up, now you can start to do the fun things, like how do I innovate inside of that space? How do I plug in my data where I want to have my systems? How do I prepare my data, calculate it, and analyze it in a way that allows AI to access and understand it? You cannot just throw a bunch of information into a large language model and expect it to figure everything out for you. You have to do the calculations, you have to do the forecasting, you have to prepare the information, you have to create the customer data profile. Well, then you can send it over to AI, large language models, to do what it does best, and that's create context. That's creating a narrative for you to actually better serve your team members, serve your members, and search it in a way that is extremely advanced, where you start to look into your RAG-based technologies and your vectorization and your exposure of your documents. But if you don't have that data right, and you don't have that API layer creating interoperability, you're going to have siloed systems. You're going to have these reasons why you cannot do something, why you don't understand why marketing has a campaign, and then what was your conversion rate on that campaign? What is our digital ad spend getting us? Starting with that outcome is essential. What do you want to get to? Is it an efficiency play, or is it a growth play? That's what you want out of the technology, but you need to back into it and what it takes to actually get there. And data is everything. All technology is data. Like, we're protecting the data, we're exposing the data, we're analyzing the data, we're feeding the data. It's all that foundation of data. If you don't have a good, solid data structure, there's no way you can produce the rest of that.
Perfect point right there. I think being part of an API management platform or company ourselves, I think getting your API house in order is pretty much your first step in your AI readiness journey, really. It teased me pretty nicely for you, Jaime, as well, because I know you've got some experience around sort of developer experience and working out how APIs are being consumed and the changing landscape of that as well. So tell us a little bit, obviously, historically, I say historically, but I think it's probably the present as well. But historically, when it comes to APIs, the consumption behavior of that has been a little bit more maybe a human-led or maybe service-led to a point, but that's now being extended to a more, I guess, chat bots and agents and those sort of workflows, which behave perhaps a little bit differently from what you would expect and anticipate. So if you had to obviously provide recommendation for people to build for that kind of a developer experience, how do people go about doing that?
Yeah, so in my role as principal developer advocate at Jack Henry, I've seen a lot of change in just the past 6 years of doing that role. And so working, with developers and trying to drive the ecosystem, it used to be that merely having the documentation, whatever shape it was, available online, huge win. And then make it, available without having to sign in. Let people have sample code, have self-serve API credentials instead of the contact sales, or you got to know a guy who knows a lady to get access sort of thing. The shift that we're starting to see is a lot of people are starting to do things like, you know what? Nobody ever wanted to read the fantastic manual as much as we wanted them to. And things have switched over a bit to give me like a 1 minute TikTok snackable video. And now it's like, I can't even be bothered to consume that myself. I want to have, Anthropic's Claude code or something like LLM, just go vibe code me a solution here. Read these docs, figure out how to integrate. And so it's changing some of the model where some of the good practices of like if your documentation is good, if it's concise and gets to the point, which maybe I'm not here, and is high quality, that will help the LLMs understand what it needs to do from a Gen AI perspective. But you're also starting to see a bunch of brand new technologies like Model Context Protocol, MCP, of like, we'll make it so that the AI can't just read the thing and then kind of guess as to how to construct the thing. Like it can start actually taking actions. And just to round things out, because you mentioned consumers, that's going to end up powering things like, you know, OpenAI is working with a bunch of retailers and making commerce, Visa, MasterCard, Walmart is apparently going to allow folks. So this isn't like the techies are doing it. This isn't just, what a developer is gets really like, I don't know. It's kind of getting to Star Trek level, like computer, make this thing. Are you a developer or not? You may not consider yourself one, but you may be a non-professional developer using a developer's tool, or you could just be a person that wants to get stuff at Walmart and the Walmart bot does things for you. So it's changing quite a bit there from just merely having encyclopedic systems of information to make it possible to just do the thing. I don't want to bother with the documentation. I just want to get the task done.
Agree. All right, great. We do have a question from the audience. I think this is on the back of both the iPhone analogy and the opportunity risk conversation. So how do you suggest balancing opportunity risk with more traditional types of risk? I love the iPhone analogy, but I also feel that for each new lightning in a bottle idea, there are at least a few that could land you in serious ethical or regulatory compliance trouble. So maybe I'm going to start with you, Jason, and I'm going to come to you after that, Carrie, after this, because I want to get your feedback on, say, the regulatory compliance aspect.
Yeah, so it's about starting small. If you think about digital transformation in its whole, it's experimenting at the lowest cost possible, having metrics to be able to analyze the success of that experiment. If the analysis of that experiment is to a point that warrants an additional investment, then you proceed forward. But without starting with that experiment, whether it's just testing in a department just to see what they can do with it, you don't get to that end result of deploying it throughout your entire environment. So when I think about the opportunity risk of that, I think it's just about getting started and then analyzing and then learning from what you've learned. Don't just deploy it to everyone. Maybe deploy it to some executive team members plus IT. Maybe deploy it to a compliance environment or an accounting environment. Deploy it, see how they interact with it, take notes, learn from it, adapt, and then get it to a mature state and deploy it to the rest of your organization.
Great. Carrie, final thoughts on sort of the regulation side of things here, because there's always a risk profile that comes with any of these new technology. But in this case, we are dealing with data, private data, financial institutions data, but equally there is this layer of sort of the non-deterministic planning aspect of how LLMs function. There's a bit of lack of visibility with things. So how do you sort of approach that? How do you cater for that? How do you manage that?
I love this question because I actually had this very discussion with a group of regulators that were in my world that are all like, yeah, check this out. And they're just like anybody else. They're super excited personally. But then, in their professional hat, all of a sudden, here we are. So we do need to bridge that with people as individuals. I think that's important. But one of the best tips I got was actually from one of my board directors, who was a data scientist. And I think one of the challenges we have when we think about risk and we think about these tools, part of it, I believe, is we put them up on a pedestal. We're wowed, we're impressed. But look at one of the big consulting houses recently. I won't name drop, but it came out that people spent millions on this report, and there were tons of errors and made up data because they missed the human in the loop element. And I think that that's crucial. So part of risk mitigation is to think about the tool in its own risks and to think about it as an intern. Imagine you got the super smart intern that can do stuff a lot of people can't, but guess what they're missing? Context of your organization, the rules, all of those things. We know that they're designed to please us, to give us what we think we want. So imagine if that was a human. How would you treat that human new intern within your organization with those specialized skills? Would you automatically bring them to the board and say, here you are? You would double check. You would do things to kind of make sure that with your own experience, and by the way, this is your own kind of, worth and the value, you use and apply the same kind of tools and rigor around the tooling as you would a human being. So I think but that also means you don't treat them the opposite way, which is to put them in a closet and ignore them when there's opportunity. And if you've got that comfort and you bring the regulators along with you on that journey, then you can also capture their excitement. Great area to start with is regulatory and compliance. There is so many amazing use cases. And I think there's where you can really get them on board to show how we can prevent risk, create efficiencies, but get them excited about it. But it's not a panacea. And there's where that balance of the two, again, it's a tool. It's not necessarily a silver bullet.
Got it. Tool, not a silver bullet. We are at time. We are actually 2 minutes past time. We're going to be taking maybe 3 more minutes. So thanks for the patience, everyone in the audience. But final thoughts, closing thoughts here. I'm going to start with you, Jaime. Fast forward into the future. We've probably been doing this with a few of the panels so far. So if we were to reconvene, maybe next year, maybe 2 years down the line, what signs of AI readiness would you hope to see in the financial institutions? Technology, mindset, leadership, ecosystem maturity, combination of these, like what would you like to see if we were to reconvene in a year or 2 years time?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see the two polar opposite ends kind of shaved off and have kind of a happy medium. So we don't want the folks who are like, no, absolutely not. It's like, well, if you don't get on this train, you're going to get left behind. Regulators will find ways to help with this too. Nor do you sort of want the like just YOLO chatbots sort of thing. I'm going to go buy an AI. Like you can't buy an AI. You might buy solutions that incorporate AI, but as many of these panelists here have said, both Carrie and Jason, like you got to have a reason. Like what is it actually solving for you? That's what I'd like to see reasonably within the next 1 to 2 years.
Fantastic. Jason, up next.
1 to 2 years, that's not far out. I would say have a comprehensive compliance plan around this, have a comprehensive strategy around this. 2 years, you should have your data in the cloud, and you should have an API environment there. And start with your strategy and your plan. Don't just go to the technology. That's a crucial aspect of it. Know where you want to go, know where the lens is. If you don't understand that, get some consultants involved. You're not in this alone. There's an entire supporting ecosystem all around you, eager to help you down this path and this journey.
And Carrie, to close us out.
I think what I'd love to see is some actual live mature use cases, some things that we've done that Art, we're not just saying I'm doing an AI thing, but look what we achieved and look at what we accomplished. And I'd love to see that not just at the big enterprise level, but kind of more in the wild and things that I didn't expect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. On that note, we bring our panel discussion to a close, but folks in the audience, please don't go away. We are going to be having a closing remarks. We'll give you the links to the certification. Thank you once again, panelists. If we can swap places a little bit and have Laura over. Thank you, Carrie, Jason, and Jaime. Fantastic session.
Thank you, Buddha. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Right. All right. Perfect. Oh, well, here we are, final 5 minutes of a 5-hour conference. I think it's been fantastic. There's been so many great things. I personally want to review some of the sessions because I think I've been too in it at this point. So I think getting some time to actually review it would be amazing. So I don't know your thoughts on the day so far, Laura. You're on mute.
That always helps to come off mute. I echo that. It was amazing sessions. I learned a lot, and I cannot wait to continue these conversations with you in the audience and with our existing speakers.
All right. So that brings us to the closing remarks. Of course, again, really, really valuable insights into the world of financial services. Once again, even though we spent about 5 hours on this, I feel like we're just scratching the surface. There is so much more that we could be talking about. We can go way deeper in each individual topic that we explore, and probably that's going to be 5 hours of time in itself. So perhaps we'll do that in the future at some point. But thank you, everyone, for all of your patience. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us on this journey. It's been absolutely amazing. Couple of things for you to note. Recordings are actually available right now in the lobby if you just check them out, but they will be available in a more official capacity tomorrow on YouTube. So definitely check that out. If you haven't got your subscribe button enabled for Tyke, I feel like I'm messing up the lingo a little bit here, but check out the Tyke YouTube channel, and that will give you access to all of the different videos that you may or may not have missed today. So keep your eye out for that. Then, the moment you've been waiting for, I think there are 2 things that you can obviously accomplish at the end of it. You've made it to the end of 5 hours. Starting off with the CPD credits, beginning of the session, the conference, we talked about being able to earn 5 CPD credits. And the way to do this will be through this QR code as well as the link that is going to be in the chat shortly, I think. So this is going to be the QR code. Just look at it from your phone, and that should give you access directly to be able to download, earn the CPD credits or claim them. I think at the end of it, that's what it is. We'll share the links shortly. After this, you can also get your own API fundamentals for financial services certification. Now, this is going to be 30 questions. It's going to be 80% to pass, so it's not free for all, but you will get 2 retakes on this. The questions are not that difficult. If you've been with us through this journey, I think you'll be perfectly okay taking this next step together. So feel free. Hopefully you get to learn something interesting by virtue of doing so. The link is in the chat already, but if you have a mobile device right here, the camera, just use the QR code as well, and you'll be able to get it on with it. 30 questions, probably won't take too long. Should be a whole lot of fun. And don't forget, if you do earn the certificate of achievement, put it on LinkedIn, celebrate. We'll be happy to celebrate with you. We love to take you on this journey. We love to be part of that journey and to get you to the next stage of your API sort of maturity. So we want to be able to help you do all of those different things. One final bit, there is a little poll that I wanted to bring up, because obviously this is the end of this session, but it's not the end forever. So we want to help or get your feedback into what you would like to see next from us. How do we help you as part of your journey, the next step in your journey, whether that is to talk to an expert, a demo, a trial, interested in joining sort of an advisory board for financial services and API, perhaps more courses, certifications, there might be another LEAP conference in 2026. So tell us a little bit more about if you're interested in that. There is going to be a post-event survey where we'll be getting some feedback on obviously today's event and also in the future if we were to host it again, what that might look like. So I think that I've covered everything. Thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure, of course, as usual. Lots of engagement, lots of great questions for every single one of the sessions. Hope you enjoyed it. Laura, any final closing thoughts from your end?
No, I just want to thank all of our speakers and our audience for your candor and your insights and asking the questions that everybody wants to know, but some people are not bold enough to ask. And again, thanks for giving us a real world look of what's going on the ground. You are living this transformation every day, and we are all the better for it, for your sharing your knowledge and asking those questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And a big shout out, obviously, to the Tyke team behind the scenes. I think it wouldn't have been possible. You see Laura and I over here, but pretty much everything that has been made possible is because of the entire Tyke team, the marketing team with Damien, Lola, Emma, Jen. All of you are amazing. Account managers, account executives, everyone. So it's a team effort. That's how we got here. Appreciate all the support, all the help. Appreciate you as an audience. Until next time, have a lovely rest of the day, great beginning of the weekend, and keep learning, stay on the path. Take care. Bye-bye.